Good morning, grade 11. كيفكم? Okay, so I sent you this PDF about the trigonometric identities, the new trigonometric identities. Okay, and we'll be solving exercise 2 from that PDF I sent you. Okay, so in the first part, they gave us E, F, and G. They asked us to transform E and F into a product of 3 terms. Okay, so let's start with E, for example. Okay, there is no page because it's from the PDF. There is only one exercise to you won't be confused. Okay, so E is equal to sine x plus sine 2x plus sine 3x, okay, plus sine 4x. Okay, now we want to transform them into a product. A product is something multiplied by each other. So if we come to this sheet, أول شيء عندنا نحن كذا sign. We have summation of sign. عندنا sign plus sign plus sign. So أكيد ولا واحدة منها. هون عندنا subtraction of angles and addition of angles. Okay, بكل هودي. ما في من هون in this table here we have cosine times cosine. Okay, and sine times sine. We don't have a product in the question. We have a sum that we have to transform into a product. And we have to take our rules from this table here at the end. Okay, so we have sine plus sine plus sine. Okay, we have sine added to each other. And most probably we will be using this one over here, sine p plus sine q equal to 2 sine of p plus q over 2 cosine of p minus q all over 2. But we'll do also a trick. إذا جينا جربنا نجمع كل 2 ساين مع بعض. Okay, as they are written like this. We'll get here, for example, using the rule, and we rule في a plus b over 2 و a minus b over 2. يعني هون راح يصير عندنا x plus 2x 3x over 2. هون راح يصير عندنا 3 plus 4 7x over 2. حتى الماينسز ف 2 minus 1 راح تصير x over 2 وراح يصير هون عندنا كمان x over 2. فراح يصيروا الانجلز شوي مزعجين نشتغل فيهم. ف we will do a trick to make things easier on us. Okay, we will not add the two consecutive sign values as they are written here. We'll write them in different way. We'll write sine x and we'll bring sine 3x beside it. Sine x plus sine of 3x plus sine of 2x plus sine of 4x. Okay, and we switched this one with this one. Okay, and we'll do these two together and these two together. Now why? Because x plus 3x will be 4x. So 4x over 2 will be 2x, and it will be easier to work with such a formula. Okay, now let me remind you with the rule. Okay, the rule, we said it's sine p plus sine q. We will write it as it is here. So sine p plus sine q, this will be equal to 2 sine of p plus q. I told you in the beginning it's a plus b, it's the same thing. P plus q over 2 cosine of p minus q all over 2. Okay, so we got this formula from here. Now let's apply it. How do we apply such a formula? Here in the first pair of signs, we have the first angle is x and the second angle is 3x. So this is p and this is q. Okay, and we can apply this rule. So we will have 2 sine of p plus q over 2. Okay, so we will have x plus 3x over 2 times cosine, it's multiplied by the cosine of p minus q all over 2. Okay, so p minus q will be 3x minus x. Okay, it's the same if we did x minus 3x or 3x minus x, it's the same in this rule. Okay, they will both give us the same result, because we can say that it is sine x plus sine 3x, or we can say that it is sine 3x plus sine x. And the reason that this will not differ is that cosine of minus alpha, it is the same as cosine of alpha. Okay, so inside the cosine here, it's okay if we flip the sign of the angle. Okay, so now let's continue. Plus, now we arrived here, so plus 2, also we'll apply this rule again, sine of p plus q over 2. Now 2x plus 4x will be 6x over 2 multiplied by the cosine of 4x p minus q. Now this is in this example now. This is, for example, p and this is q. Okay, so 4x minus 2x, p minus q would be 2x over 2. Okay, now can erase this rule here. You write the rule beside the exercise to know when you study what rule we used. So now let's simplify this. Sine of x plus 3x, this is 4x, this will be 4x over 2, which is 2x. Here, this will be 3x minus x, it will be 2x also. So 2x over 2 is only x, plus 2, also 6x over 2 is 3x. Cosine 2 over 2, they cancel out. We're left with cosine x. Now we can take common, okay, because we want to write it as a product of 3 factors. Anyway, product of 3 factors is something like this. Okay, this is the first factor, the second, and the third factor, and they are all multiplied by each other. Okay, so in order to write something as a product, we have to factorize it. We might take common. We can take common 2 and cosine x. 2 cosine x. We are left with sine of 2x plus sine of 3x. Okay, and now we can apply this rule again. Okay, هاي rule كنا حيناها again. I'll remind you of this rule. Sine p plus sine q. This will be equal to 2 sine the half of their sum times the cosine of the half of their difference. Okay, so now this will be equal to cosine x, I will leave it as it is, into the summation of sine will be equal to 2 sine, okay, half their sum, so 2x plus 3x is 5x over 2 cosine of the half of their difference. So 3x minus x will get x over 2. Okay, and now it is the product of 3 factors. Okay, so this can be written as 2 times 2, it is 4 cosine x sine 5x over 2 cosine of x over 2. Okay, so now we have a term, another term, and a third term as the question asks. Okay, 4 alone is not a term. Okay, when we have a constant, it's not called a term. Okay, so now we have done E. We have to do F step. Okay, what's F? F is the same thing but with cosines. Okay, so let's try it out. Now F is equal to cosine x plus cosine 2x plus cosine of 3x plus cosine of 4x. Okay, so in order to solve this one, we can also group cosine x with cosine 2x and cosine 3x with cosine 4x. This will work out. Okay, but we'll also try to do cosine x with cosine 3x and cosine 2x with cosine 4x. Okay, it will work both ways. Okay, but here we have a new rule. Okay, so we have cosine p plus cosine q. This is equal to 2 cosine p plus q over 2 cosine, okay, of p minus q over 2. Also, this is written here in the table. Okay, the first row in this last table. Okay, now let's get back into solving this. Okay, so we have cosine x plus cosine 3x. We said we'll do these together, plus cosine 2x plus cosine 4x. Okay, now this would give us 2 cosine of the sum over 2. So 3x plus x is 4x over 2 cosine of their difference. 3x minus x is 2x over 2 plus, this will give us also 2 cosine of their sum over 2, 6x over 2, and cosine of their difference over 2, 2x over 2. Okay, so this can be simplified. Again, we can take common this term and this term. Okay, they are both cosine x. So we can take them common. Here you see under 2 cosine x. Okay, because 2 and 2 will cancel out, 2 and 2 will cancel out, and I take them common as we just did in the previous part. From the first term, we are left with this one, and we're left with this one from the second term. So they are cosine 2x plus cosine of 3x. Okay, it's important to know what the question is. Okay, مثلا here صار لنا cosine of 2x. Okay, ونحن بالrules هون we know that cosine 2x is equal to one of these three formulas. Okay, as we discussed in class. But this is not what we want to do here. Okay, cosine 2x ما بدنا نكتبها cosine squared minus sine squared. ما بدنا نكتبها as a difference of two things. Okay, the question is to write it as a product of three things. Okay, this is the question. Transform them into a product of three terms. So we will not discuss cosine 2x alone. We will also add it with cosine 3x using this rule here. Okay, so this will give us 2 cosine x, and this will be also 2 cosine of their sum over 2 plus, sorry, not plus, it's multiplied by cosine of their difference over 2, so x over 2. Okay, this can be simplified as 4 cosine x cosine 5x over 2 cosine x over 2, and now it is written as a product of 3 terms. And like this, we will be done with part 1. Okay. Now for part 2, write G in the form of a product, then solve in R the equation G equals 0. Okay. So now I have to write now G as a form of a product. Product of 1, 2 terms, whatever. We have 1 plus cosine 2x plus 2 cosine x. So let's copy it down here. We have in part 2. Okay, so part 2 here. G is equal to 1 plus cosine 2x plus 2 cosine x, I think. Okay, it's very important to know that these two are so much different. Okay, cosine is a function. ما فينا نطلع 2 منها مثل ما تمام. إذا كان عندنا radical 2x أو 2 radical x, these are not equal. Okay, they are not equal. So we have to pay close attention to this one. Okay, now how can we transform this into a product of fact? What rule can we use? Okay, so to write this as factorized form, okay, عندنا rule كنا بنستخدمها بتقولنا cosine of p plus cosine of q. Okay, ما بتقولنا 2 cosine. Okay, so we cannot use the rule that we were using previously. ما راح توصلنا بالضبط للبرودكت لأن ما بيرجع فينا ناخد common وهيك. بس إذا بدنا نيجي لهون cosine 2x, now it might be useful to use this rule over here. Okay, this rule over here, it might be useful to use it. Okay, why? Because cosine 2x, we want to transform it. And then cosine 2x here. Okay, we'd love to form in it, inside it, something related to cosine x. يعني بيصير إذا فيها هاي cosine x وهون cosine x مثلا ممكن ناخد common. Okay, so we will use this rule. يعني cosine of 2x is equal to here where I put the dot. So 2 cosine squared x minus 1 equal to 2 cosine squared x minus 1. 1 plus, instead of cosine 2x, I will put 2 cosine squared x minus 1 instead of this one, plus 2 cosine x. Okay, now I have here cosine squared x, and here cosine x. I might take cosine x common. Not only I might take cosine x common, also I have these ones cancel out. 1 minus 1, they will cancel out. So I will be left with 2 cosine squared plus 2 cosine x. Okay, now I can take 2 cosine x into this. We will be left with cosine x from this one and plus 1 from this one. Okay, now it's some sort of a product. Okay, but we can change also this one, cosine x plus 1. We can change it also into another form of cosine. Okay, how can we do this? Okay, so in order to find a simplification for this term, let's try to transform this formula. Okay, here it says cosine of 2x equal to cosine squared of x. What's the relation? What's the relation between the angles? This here is 2x and this here is x. Okay, so this one here is double the one on the right. And for example, إذا عندنا نحن cosine of 30, we can write it as 2 cosine squared of 15 minus 1. Okay, so let's try if we have cosine of y, for example. شو هيصير عندنا هون 2 cosine squared of what? Minus 1. Notice that here x is half the angle here. X is half 2x. It's the same as 15 is half of 30. Okay, so the angle here must be the half of y. شنو the half of y? Must be y over 2. Okay, of course ما ضروري يكون اسم الانجل y. For example, cosine of a شو راح تساوي؟ كمان 2 cosine squared of a over 2 minus 1. Okay, وحتى فينا نكتبها x، يعني فينا نكتبها cosine of x is equal to 2 cosine squared of x over 2 minus 1. Okay, وهذا I'm interested in. Okay, let's now erase these all of them. Okay. Okay, so these two formulas, this one here and the one above it, are the same but written in different ways. Okay, so we can say that cosine of 2x is equal to 2 cosine squared x minus 1, or the one we just wrote, that cosine x is equal to 2 cosine squared x over 2 minus 1. Why I am interested in this one? Because we can now bring this minus 1 to this side here. Okay, what will we get? This minus 1 will get here, it will be plus 1, and it will be erased from here. Okay, so now we can take this cosine x plus 1, we can take it all, we can put instead of it, let's keep 2 cosine x as it is. Instead of this one, we'll put 2 cosine squared of x over 2. Okay, now the last step of simplification, this will be equal to 4 cosine x cosine squared of x over 2, and now g is in the form of a product. Okay, I know now you're thinking انه كيف هو بده يخطر على بالنا وكيف بدنا نعرف نستخدمهم. بالاكزامز الاسئله سهله، ما راح يجي ابدا شيء صعب، وهودي فيهم هن ترايل اند ايرور، يعني احيانا بنجرب شغله ما بتزبط، بنجرب شغله ثانيه لتزبط، وما معكم كثير رولز، معكم رولز رح تستخدموه. okay. يعني معكم انه use this rule to find the answer، يعني بتجربوا هاي الرول تستخدموها بطريقه او بطريقتين، ما في كثير choices يعني تديروا فيهم. ف don't worry about the questions in the exam، بس لازم you must have understand كل step باللي عم نعملهم هون. okay. Any step you don't understand, please ask me about it. In the same part, they asked us also to solve g equal to 0. Okay, so this means that 4 cosine x cosine squared of x over 2 is equal to 0. Now, if the product of two numbers is 0, then either cosine, okay, either cosine x is equal to 0 or cosine squared of x over 2 is equal to 0. Now, if cosine squared of x over 2 is equal to 0, it's the same as saying cosine of x over 2 is equal to 0. And if a squared is equal to 0, means that a is equal to 0. Okay, so we can take out the power 2. Okay, now how do we solve this? Now this transformed into an exercise that we know how to solve. From the table, we can use the table. One is cosine of what angle is equal to 0. Okay, we can think about it from the trigonometric circle. Okay, okay, we have here the x-axis that represents the cosine, the y-axis that represents the sine. Here we have the point 1, 0, and cosine is 1 and the sine is 0. So at these 2 points, 1, 0, 1, sorry, 0, 1, and 0, minus 1. At these 2 points, we have x is equal to 0, so the cosine is 0. So cosine of pi over 2 is 0. We can find this in the table, and as you saw in the quiz, the table will be given. Okay, so cosine of pi over 2 is 0. Now we can use this. Okay. Cosine x is equal to 0. It means that cosine x is equal to cosine of pi over 2. And now cosine x equal cosine a, it means either x is equal to a, which is pi over 2 plus 2k pi, or x is equal to minus pi over 2 plus 2k pi. Okay. Now for this one, it's also very similar. So cosine of x over 2 equal cosine of pi over 2. We also have two choices. Okay, x over 2 is equal to pi over 2 plus 2k pi, or x over 2 is equal to minus pi over 2 plus 2k pi. But of course, we are interested in finding x alone, not x over 2. That's what solve means. So to get rid of this 2 down here, we have to multiply by 2. Okay, if multiplied by 2, they will cancel out. But of course, I can't multiply by 2 only on one side. I have to multiply the whole equation by 2. Okay, this will give us x is equal to, if we multiply pi over 2 times 2, we will get simply pi, and here we'll get plus 4k pi, and we'll do the same with this equation. We'll multiply it all by 2, and we will get that x is equal to minus pi plus 4k pi. Okay, so now we will have these two solutions, and this one, and this one. Okay. Okay, you still have one part in the question. Solve in R the equation E is equal to F. Okay, how can we solve the equation E equal to F? Of course, when we solve an equation, E equal to F is the same as saying that E minus F is equal to 0. And when we want to solve an equation equal to 0, it's best to have E minus F in their factorized form. Okay, نحلها مثل ما حلينا من شوي إنه either this one is equal to 0 or that one is equal to 0. وهون in both parts قلنا solve in R. Okay, he didn't specify an interval, so بنخليه إنه plus 2k pi. أكيد إذا حدد interval لازم نفوت فين إذا accepted أو rejected وهيك. Okay, so now we have to solve in part 3. E is equal to F. Okay, now let's see what is E. Okay, this is E here first. 4 cosine x, sine, and then cosine. Let's copy that here. So 4 cosine x sine of 5x over 2 cosine of x over 2. This will be equal to F, which I think is the same, but instead of sine here we have cosine. Okay, let's make sure this is f. Okay, so 4 cosine x, cosine, cosine. Excellent. Okay, the first mistake that some of you will make is to just simply cancel out cosine x with cosine x, cosine x over 2 with cosine x over 2. What does it mean if we canceled cosine x? It means we divided by cosine x on both sides. Okay, بس بننتبه إنه we cannot divide by cosine x until we make sure it's different than 0. Okay, cosine x might be 0. So if it is 0 and we divide it by cosine x, and we divide it by 0, which is unacceptable. Okay, so we don't do this. We can only cancel out the 4 with the 4 because 4 is definitely not a 0. How to solve such an equation? We gather everything on one side. So we will have, okay, cosine x sine 5x over 2 cosine x over 2 and minus. We will get these to the left hand side, مش هيكسروا minus cosine 5x over 2 cosine of x over 2. This is equal to 0. So as you can see, we have cosine x, they are common. Cosine x over 2, cosine x over 2 are also common. So we can take them as a common factor. Okay, this will be equal to cosine x over 2 into sine 5x over 2 minus cosine of 5x over 2 equal to 0. Okay, كمان ما بدي اشوف حدا عم يكتب مثلا هاي يجي يكتبها هيك sine minus cosine وياخد مثلا 5x over 2 common. هيدا اكيد غلط. Okay, sine is not a value, it's not a number, it's a function. يعني هاي كان واحد كان عنده radical 5x اوكي واخذ ال 5x منه كتبها هيك radical into 5x. هاي radical لحالها ما لها معنى مثل ما الساين والكوساين ما لهم معنى. They are functions, they need an input. اوكي فهاي غلطة ما لناش نشوفها. Okay, now what can we do with this one here? Sine minus cosine. For now, we can continue and leave it as it is. The cosine x equal to, and here we have 3 terms, the product of 3 terms equal to 0. So either cosine x is equal to 0, okay, or, okay, let's try it in black. Okay, cosine x is equal to 0, or cosine of x over 2 is equal to 0, but we know the answer of these both لأنه جبناهم هون. Cosine x is equal to 0 gives us these two answers and this square, and cosine x over 2 equal to 0 will give us these two answers. Okay, so we can write them directly. We'll copy them after a little bit. We still have only what? Sine of 5x over 2 minus cosine of 5x over 2 equal to 0. Okay, I'll take the cosine to this side. So we will get sine 5x over 2 is equal to cosine of 5x over 2. Okay, we solved such an example in class. Can it sine A equal cosine A? Okay, the easiest way to solve this, we can divide both sides by cosine. Okay, so we divide both sides by cosine أكيد of this angle. مش on cosine of A لأنه بالصف كتبنا cosine of A. Cosine of 5x over 2, and this also by 5x over 2. Now these will cancel out. Okay, and we are left with tangent 5x over 2 is equal to 1, Okay, and also from the table we know that 1 is equal to the tangent of pi over 4. Okay, so now also by using the rule, you know that 5x over 2 will be equal to pi over 4 plus 2k pi, or 5x over 2 will be equal to pi plus a, and pi plus pi over 4 plus 2k pi. Okay, now this one, in order to find this one and this one, we have to get rid of the 5 and the 2. What do? We multiply now by 2 over 5. If we multiply the whole equation by 2 over 5, the 2 will cancel out with the 2, the 5 will cancel out with the 5, and we'll be left with only x. So we will do this, and we will get x is equal to 2 pi, okay, 2 pi over 5 times 4, which is 20, 2 pi over 20 plus 2k pi times 2 over 5, it will be 4k pi over 5. And here we will have the same thing, x equal. Now pi plus pi over 4, we can simplify this, okay, by doing the common denominator over 4 times 4. This will be 5 pi over 4, okay? So we can write this as 5 pi over 4. So x here will be equal, if multiplied by 2 over 5, the 5 will cancel out. Okay, so we multiply this also by 2 over 5. This 5 will cancel out with this one. So we are left with 2 pi over 4 plus also 4k pi over 5. We can also now 2 and 20 here can cancel out. يصير عندنا pi over 10. And also here 2 will cancel out with the 4. And we'll be left with pi over 2. Okay, so these are two of the answers. Okay, these are 2 of the answers. And here cosine x equals 0, we just solved it here. Okay, راح يعطينا هذا الانسر. X is equal to pi over 2 plus 2k pi, or x is equal to minus pi over 2 plus 2k pi. Okay, so these are the other 2 answers. And for cosine x over 2, we also have the answers from here. Pi or minus pi plus 4k pi. So x is equal to pi plus 4k pi, or x is equal to minus pi plus 4k pi. Okay, and these will be the last 2 solutions. Okay, now we can simplify these. Okay, x pi minus pi plus 4k pi can be reduced, and this one in here, these 2 equations, for example, can be written as 1 equation. Okay, بس ما حدا يعرف فيهم كيف فينا نكتبهم as 1 equation وهيك بيكون مظبوط الشغل. But إذا كتبتهم هيك 6 answers, they are completely correct. Okay, what you have as a homework is to continue this exercise. Exercise 1, we solved part 1 in class. I want you please to solve part 2 and part 3 for Tuesday. And of course, copy exercise 2 on your copybooks. يعطيكم العافية.